Welcome to part 7 on how the Cadian army group is organised, and in this episode we'll be exploring how the self-propelled artillery units are organised, what the unit's lore is in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, and the unit's insignia. Before we begin this narrative video, it is important that you guys support me by simply hitting the like and subscribe button and to share this video with your friends. I'll be incredibly grateful for your support. If you want to contribute to my work even further, please consider heading over to my Patreon page. The links will be in the description below. Thank you for listening. And what are we waiting for? Let's get stuck in. The Basilisk. The Basilisk is the main line artillery piece of the Imperial Guard regiments throughout the Imperium. Designed to provide medium to long range fire support, among the most numerous and well known of the Guard's artillery, the Basilisk is based on the Chimera chassis and mounts an Earthshaker cannon for direct and indirect fire. While many regiments will have a mix of other artillery, including Manticores, Griffons and Bombards, and each one will have its own role to fill, it is the Basilisk which is the most common and most often to be called upon to bombard the enemy. These self-propelled artillery pieces are most effective when used in massive batteries of hundreds of guns to deliver devastating barrages on the enemy's position, while their mobility allows them to keep pace with the infantry advances. This direct fire will be directed by their parent company's forward observers or other officers trained to direct artillery, and while not particularly accurate, it allows the Basilisk to remain out of harm's way as it blasts concealed enemy positions or fortifications from long range. Besides these sustained bombardments, the power and range of an Earthshaker cannon allows the other type of artillery missions, counter-battery fire, to suppress enemy guns, box barrages to isolate enemy units and prevent their reinforcement, harassing fire and destructive fire off selected targets. Most missions use high explosive rounds, but to the Basilisks are often issued other more specialized rounds, such as smoke shells, incendiary shells, and illumination shells for lighting up a battlefield at night. The powerful shells fired by the Earthshaker cannon are capable of smashing apart the enemy lines with ease and are designed to cause catastrophic damage at the impact zone. Targets at the epicenter of such detonation are annihilated immediately, while those in the vicinity are pulverized by the deadly shockwave. The unmistakable shriek of the Basilisk's incoming ordnance is rightly feared by the enemies of the Emperor. However, the Basilisk has also proven its worth as an assault gun, using cannon's low angle of elevation to engage targets at short range in direct support of troops. The high explosive shells fired by the Basilisk are as devastating to the infantry and tanks as they are to fortifications. However, it is not a replacement for the true battle tank such as the Leman Russ. The lack of abrasive armor plating and exposed firing position leaves the Basilisk highly exposed to enemy fire and hostile environments. Although many patterns go some way towards correcting this by incorporating an enclosed crew compartment, Basilisks tasked for direct fire support will be detached from their parent company and placed under the temporary command of a tank or infantry company it is intended to support. During the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy, the Basilisk was also used by siege units of the Space Marine legions. The Iron Warriors in particular were noted to have fielded many of their role as an expert shield breakers. The Ultramarines are also known to have fielded Basilisks. The Basilisk retains all the basic features of the Chimera, but replaces the top compartment for an open-topped firing platform for the main cannon and armoured gun shield. The driver and vehicle commander sit in the vehicle as in a Chimera, with the commander manning the Basilisk hull mounted heavy bolter, while the gunner and loader operate the cannon. Its main weapon is the Earthshaker cannon, firing a 132mm shells to a range of over 15 kilometers and a muzzle velocity of 8.4 milliseconds. Some basilisks will incorporate an enclosed firing compartment to provide additional protection for the exposed gunner and loader. However, the added recoil restrictions means they are unable to use the more powerful 6 and 7 charges when firing their cannons, slightly limiting their maximum range as compared to open-topped platform-based artillery. Basilisks also include a searchlight and smoke launchers as standard, while many crews will modify their vehicle with camo netting, a dozer blade, extra armour, a hunter-killer missile, and a pintle-mounted heavy stubber or storm bolter. Basilisk artillery tank crew consists of 4 members, number 1 being the tank commander, number 2 being the driver, number 3 being the loader, and number 4 being the gunner. Their insignia are as follows, starting with the lowest rank. Number 1, the commander, is of the rank of Guardsman 2nd class, whilst number 2, 3 and 4 are that of Guardsman 3rd class. The next highest rank is that of Lance Corporal, whilst the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Corporal, and the rest of the tank crew are again Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Sergeant, and again all the rest of the members are Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of Staff Sergeant, and all the rest of the members are Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is Sergeant 1st class, and his tank crew members are that of Guardsman 2nd class. And finally, the last rank is that of Master Sergeant, and again his tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The Medusa Siege Tank. The Medusa Siege Tank is an aging Imperial Guard siege platform used when attacking the thick walls of an enemy-held city or fortress. Built on the Chimera chassis, the Medusa suffers from a number of disadvantages compared to the other artillery pieces like the Basilisk or Griffon. But its immense firepower ensures its continued use in siege warfare, depressingly common in the 41st millennium. The centerpiece of the siege tank is its Medusa siege gun, which, unlike other artillery cannons, fires its heavy shells directly into enemy fortifications. It does this for days on end, from wall-protected positions, until the constant barrage has created a large enough breach for friendly forces to assault through and secure a breachhead. Beyond this limited role, however, the Medusa is less of a success. The gun itself is short-ranged compared to the weapons on the Basilisk, Manticores, and even Bombards, limiting its use in conventional artillery role. The Medusa also suffers from ammunition issues, as it can only carry 18 heavy shells. While not a problem during a siege, with stable lines of resupply, this limits its insurance when operating in the field. It is viable as an urban assault gun, levelling enemy buildings with single shot in support of infantry assaults, but such close-range fighting leaves the Medusa's exposed crew vulnerable to enemy fire, compared to the thick armour protection of demolishers and thunderers. For this reason, many armoured regiments will have at most a battery of Medusas kept in reserve, for use only when breaching a wall or assaulting a bunker line, as most commanders will avoid deploying them directly on the front line if possible. The type of ammunition that the Medusa siege gun uses is as follows. High explosive. High explosive rounds are the standard shells used by most artillery weapons. These shells are more than capable of destroying infantry units and even vehicles through their sheer explosive force. Siege shells. Siege shells are used against enemy structures and fortifications. They are fused to explode after hitting the ground, causing damage to the building's foundation. Bastion breacher shells. These shells are fired by the Medusa tank and the stand-alone Medusa siege gun. They are fired directly into the enemy walls, where they burrow deep and then explode after penetrating, causing the wall to explode outwards and creating a breach for the Imperial infantry to enter through. During the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy, the Medusa was used by the Space Marine Legion siege units. In the 18th Cadian Army Group, they used the Griffon 4 standard pattern Medusa siege gun. In addition to the Medusa siege gun, the Medusa is also armed with a hull-mounted weapon, either a heavy bolter or a heavy flamer. Other standard equipment includes a searchlight and smoke launchers. Common upgrades to design include an armoured crew compartment, camo netting, dozer blade, extra armour, a hunter-killer missile, or a pintle-mounted storm bolter or heavy stubber. The Medusa siege tank is occupied by 5 guardsmen. Number 1 is the tank commander, number 2 is the driver, number 3 is the gunner, and number 4 and 5 are the loaders. Starting with the lowest rank, number 1 is guardsman 2nd class, whilst the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsman 3rd class. Then the next highest rank, the commander, is ranked of a lance corporal, whilst the rest of the tank crew are guardsmen 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a corporal, whilst the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsmen 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a sergeant, and again the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsmen 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a staff sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsmen 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a sergeant 1st class, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsmen 2nd class. And the highest rank obtainable for the Medusa siege gun is that of a master sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsmen 2nd class. The Griffon. The Griffon is the light artillery tank of the Imperial Guard that is equipped with a heavy mortar cannon, and is based on the Chimera chassis. The tank is the lightest of the Imperial Guard's artillery and siege tanks, and is smaller in both size and firepower than the Basilisk, Medusa, and Bombard tanks. The Griffon is used as an indirect fire support vehicle for infantry during offensive sieges, and is also used to fire over walls and over barriers. The main weapon of the Griffon is not capable of long-range fire, like the Basilisk, or powerful enough to destroy heavy vehicles and structures. The Griffon has been in Imperial service since the time of the Great Crusade, when it was known to the Imperial Army as the Helios mortar carrier. The Griffon is much maligned by the Imperial military commanders, because its weapons lack the range and firepower compared to the heavier artillery pieces and main battle tanks. The Griffon is slowly becoming an extinct as the front-line unit, as less and less are replaced after being lost during a battle, and its manufacturing rate amongst the Imperial Forge Worlds is steadily declining. Yet when deployed correctly, the Griffon has many advantages over its larger cousins. The Griffon is much more mobile and has a higher rate of fire than other armoured vehicles, and can keep up with the other fast-moving Imperial forces, whereas a Basilisk would fall behind or even slow down the advance. The Griffon is also able to use the same ammunition variants as the standard-alone heavy mortar cannon, and so the Griffon has become a niche weapon in many Imperial armoured regiments. Famous regiments such as the 114th Cadian Regiment. The Griffon was used during the Taros campaign against the Tau, and had proven very successful at the front line. The Griffon is armed with a single heavy mortar cannon, Known as the Griffon Heavy Mortar, the weapon is capable of firing highly accurate bombardments against enemy fortifications, due to the stable platform from which it is fired. The weapon is also able to make use of multiple types of ammunition, each to meet a different set of circumstances. The vehicle is equipped with a hull-mounted heavy bolter for self-defense against enemy infantry that get too close for the main mortar to fire upon. This weapon can be switched out for a heavy flamer for urban combat deployments. The Griffon can be outfitted with an enclosed crew compartment, which can have high pintle-mounted heavy stubber or storm bolter equipped. The vehicle can also be fitted with a hunter-killer missile launcher, extra armor plating, a dozer blade, a mine plow and camouflage netting, and a searchlight or smoke launchers. Ammunition variants. High explosive. High explosive rounds are the standard shells used by both the heavy mortar cannon and the Griffon. These shells are more than capable of destroying infantry units and even vehicles through their sheer explosive force. Fragmentation. Fragmentation rounds are timed charge shells that explode before hitting the ground and shower the area with shrapnel. These shells are employed against large numbers of closely packed infantry. Siege shells. Siege shells are used against enemy structures and fortifications. They are fused to explode after hitting the ground, causing damage to the building's foundation. Melter shells. Melter shells undergo a subatomic reaction upon impact and release a blast of intense heat. They are capable of doing tremendous damage to armoured units and infantry alike. Inferno rounds. Inferno round shells are packed with highly flammable substance, such as an oxysulfur gel or a thermite compound, causing everything in the vicinity of its implosion to burst into flame. This fire is also difficult to extinguish, as its flammable gel will stick to most surfaces. As a result, most infantry and vehicles will retreat when a concentrated barrage of inferno rounds. Illumination shells. Illumination shells are fired high into the air on a parabolic arc when they deploy and a parachute and slowly drift downwards. The shell burns very brightly on its way down to illuminate the battlefield for night operations. Smoke shells. Smoke shells cover the impact area with a dense layer of smoke, which is used to conceal the location of friendly forces. The Griffon artillery tank consists of 4 members, number 1 being the commander, number 2 being the driver, number 3 being the loader, and number 4 being the gunner. The lowest rank is that of a guardsman 2nd class, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsman 3rd class. The next promotion level is that of a lance corporal, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a corporal, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a sergeant, and again the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a staff sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a sergeant 1st class, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsman 2nd class. And the highest insignia level for that of the Griffon is that of a master sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew are that of guardsman 2nd class. The Colossus. The Colossus, also known as the Colossus Bombard or Colossus Siege Tank, is an open-topped self-propelled artillery piece commonly used by the regiments of the Imperial Guard, and is one of the oldest and most renowned siege weapons still in use during the 41st millennium. The vehicle is usually deployed by the Guard during sieges or fortified enemy emplacements, and against structures being used as cover by the enemy during urban combat. The Colossus is armed with one of the largest and most powerful mortars used by the Imperial Armed Forces. Known as the Colossus Siege Mortar, the Colossus is based on the common Chimera armoured personnel carrier chassis, and like the Imperial Bombard mobile artillery piece, has a crane installed in its rear, and its heavy siege shells move them into place to be loaded into a siege mortar. The Colossus and the Bombard are nearly identical in appearance, leading to many chassis mistaken identity between the two artillery pieces on the battlefield. The weapon is mostly used to destroy enemy infantry in cover, since the shock waves produced by the Colossus's shells are able to kill their soft targets without first destroying their hard cover. But the Colossus is also capable of destroying even fortified targets, crushing the defenders beneath tons of rubble and debris. The Colossus range is equal to that of much more common Basilisk artillery pieces, and like most mortar weapons, it is incapable of firing directly at its targets. The Colossus is also equipped with a hull-mounted heavy bolter, which can be replaced with a heavy flamer. The tank can also be outfitted with camouflage netting, an enclosed crew compartment, a hunter-killer missile launcher, a dozer blade, extra armour plating, and a pintle-mounted heavy stubber or storm bolter. The Colossus Bombard. The Colossus Bombard is one of the heaviest and most ancient artillery pieces in common use by the Imperial Guard, reserved for campaigns for when its super heavy siege cannon is required to penetrate enemy fortifications. The Colossus Bombard's sole weapon is its Colossus Siege Mortar, a massive weapon used to devastate enemy defences. The vehicle is one of the rarest mobile artillery pieces in use by the Imperial Guard. Sometimes based on the Chimera chassis, often a Lehman Russ chassis will be used, as this can better accommodate the heavy weight of its main weapon. They are rarely seen, except during campaigns when their firepower is required to completely flatten an enemy position. While not having the same range as an Earthshaker cannon, the mortar makes up for it for sheer firepower, launching high explosive concussion shells, which use their detonation shockwave to flatten buildings and crush enemy infantry and tanks. It is also capable of firing full air explosive munitions, specialized promethium shells, which seed the air with fuel prior to impact, creating a devastating airburst that crushes bones, shatters rocks, and even sucks the air out of one's lungs. Even with its chassis heavily modified to account for the weapon's weight, the Colossus Bombard is amongst the slowest of the Imperial Guard's vehicles. In fact, it is technically not a true self-propelled artillery vehicle, as it cannot fire on the move, instead requiring a lengthy setup process in order to fire, including setting up the large recoil spade, which digs into the ground, absorbing the immense recoil forces generated by firing the mortar. The Bombard also has a slow rate of fire, requiring an attached crane to load each shell into the weapon's breech, as each one is too heavy for many to carry. For these reasons, Colossus Bombard are normally not deployed on the front lines, instead reserved for the destruction of static targets during a siege, remaining in place as they reduce enemy walls and fortifications to rubble. When on the move, a siege driver mans the Bombard, whilst the rest of the crew follows behind in the transport vehicles, such as the Chimera. Instead, a small army accompanies each Bombard battery, manning Trojans and Sentinel powerlifters to supply the ammunition, Atlases for emergency towing, and Salamander scouts to forward observation. Some Colossus Bombard crews will modify their vehicle to carry a pintle-mounted heavy stubber, or storm bolter, or a hunter-killer missile, with other common upgrades including camo netting, extra armor plating, rough terrain modification, track guards, searchlight, and smoke launchers. The Colossus Bombard consists of 6 members. Number 1 is the commander, number 2 is the gunner, and number 3, 4 and 5 are loaders, whereas number 6 is the driver. The first 5 crew members are transported by a Trojan and with its trailer and followed by its ammunition. We won't look at the background in this episode, as well as its lore, narrative and insignia. But don't worry, the Trojan will be covered in an upcoming video. And obviously number 6 drives the actual Colossus Bombard itself. The insignia of the Colossus Bombard is as follows, starting from the lowest to highest when it comes to the unit's insignia. The lowest rank is the commander. He is of the rank of Guardsman 2nd class, whereas the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 3rd class. The next highest rank is that of a Lance Corporal, whereas the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest insignia is that of a Corporal, and the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. Then followed by the Sergeant, and his tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. Then Staff Sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew again are Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is Sergeant 1st class, and then the rest of his tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. And finally, the Master Sergeant is the highest rank that operates the Colossus Bombard, and he is accompanied by his tank crew, and they are of the rank of Guardsman 2nd class. The Hydra Flak Tank. The Hydra Flak Tank, also known simply as the Hydra, is the main mobile anti-air artillery piece of the Astra Militarum. It is produced on hundreds of forge worlds across the Imperium, and is widely used in nearly every regiment. The Hydra, like many other Imperial military vehicles, is based on the Chimera armoured personnel carrier chassis, and is armed with a set of twin-linked Hydra autocannons. Hydra autocannons are set on long-barreled autocannons mounted on a turret with highly sophisticated tracking and targeting equipment. The Hydra is used to defend important ground units such as Imperial Guard artillery batteries and armoured columns from enemy air attacks. Non-mobile units or structures are usually defended by the Hydra platform, a stationary version of the Hydra autocannon, while the Hydra itself is generally deployed with mobile units. The Hydra's powerful guns are capable of quickly reducing enemy aircraft to smoking debris, but they can also be levelled towards the ground to engage enemy infantry and lightly armoured vehicles when circumstances warrant. The Hydra's autocannons are so effective in the destruction of enemy infantry that the Imperial commanders often overlook this breach of regulations, and some regiments will use their Hydras as frontline vehicles when the threat of air attack is reduced or no longer present. Hydra flak tanks are usually kept in their own company within a regiment, but they are rarely deployed together in a company formation, and are instead assigned to other companies which require air defense. Whether faced by lightning-fast Xenos fighters or demonic, leather-winged monstrosities, the Hydra flak tank is ideally equipped to blow aerial foes out of the sky. The Hydra's protective logistics spirit singles out and locks onto its targets with tenacity of a predatory beast. Autoloaders engage with a rising whine of Hydra's turret traverses, its quad autocannon howling as it fills the air with soaring lines of firepower. Few airborne enemies, no matter how debased or unnatural, can't survive for long once they are locked in the Hydra's sights. Though the Hydra has sufficient armour, whether a fair degree of punishment, it is intended primarily as a support vehicle rather than a main-line battle tank. Nonetheless, the Hydra is far from defenceless. Its hull can be fitted with various armaments, and its autocannon can be angled downward to slaughter grounded enemies when necessary. However, the Hydra's machine spirit hungers only for airborne prey, its tracking servos refusing to trace the lumbering paths made by foes that cannot fly, meaning it must be aimed manually and, therefore, less accurately when targeting opponents on the ground. Company commanders must therefore ensure they have seconded enough infantry or tanks to ground their Hydra batteries from direct air attack. When sufficient escort, the Hydras can remain safe from harm while concentrating their efforts on keeping the skies clear. For most Imperial Guardsmen, be they artillery crew, tankers or front-slogging infantry, the screaming approach of enemy aircraft is a sound that invokes absolute dread. When the black shadow of the monstrous wings falls across them, the men of the Imperial Guard have little defence besides prayer. So it is that the Hydra has acquired a reputation as an omen of good luck, with nicknames ranging from Steel Saviours to the more conquerable Bug Zapper. Hydras are valued as commodary affection to the soldiers of the Astra Militarum. A common tradition amongst the men of many regiments is to rap their knuckles against the hull of the Hydra before battle. This is so-called angel knock is performed in solemn silence and intended to draw the vigilance of the Hydra's machine spirit in the battle to come. Hydra crews share their vehicles' popularity, enjoying something approaching folk hero status amongst their comrades and a place around the squad's campfire. Some Hydra crewmen revel in regard of their comrades and are adrenaline rash of their duty, while others find the weight of responsibility uncomfortable. But few are foolish enough to believe the camaraderie of their fellows is untainted by self-interest. The Hydra is armed with turret-mounted set of twin-linked Hydra autocannons, long-barreled autocannons that unleash explosive flak rounds at an extremely high rate of fire. The Hydra's gunner and loader are positioned in the vehicle's turret and work together to keep the weapon's automated loading mechanism and complex targeting systems operational. The vehicle is also armed with a single hull-mounted heavy bolter, which can be used against enemy infantry that get too close, or can be swapped out for a heavy flamer for the same purpose. The tank also can be equipped with camouflage netting, extra armor plating, a hunter-killer missile launcher, a minesweeper, improved communications equipment, a pintle-mounted heavy stubber or stormbolter, rough terrain modifications, a searchlight, track guards, and smoke launchers. Even a single Hydra can throw up a storm of flak, swatting enemy aircraft from the skies with an adamantine fist. When several of these vehicles draw up and open fire, the devastation wrought on airborne foes is spectacular. Monstrous Xenos wings are reduced to streamers of flesh. Gibberish flight sacks of demonic drones burst under the weight of the punching fire. Even heavily armoured attack craft are reduced to profated scrap as their fuel tanks and internal magazines explode. The Hydra consists of 5 crew members, number 1 being the commander, number 2 being the driver, number 3 being the gunner, number 4 being the loader, and number 5 is the comms operator. Starting with the lowest rank, the commander, he is of the rank of Guardsman 2nd class, whilst the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 3rd class. The next highest rank is that of a Lance Corporal, whilst the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Corporal, whilst the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank, the tank commander, is the rank of Sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Staff Sergeant, and the rest of his tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Sergeant 1st class, and then the rest of his tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. And finally, the Master Sergeant is the Tank Commander, which is the highest insignia for the Hydra tank crew, and then the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The Wyvern. The Wyvern suppression tank, more often known simply as the Wyvern, is a short-range self-propelled artillery piece of the Astra Militarum. The Wyvern is a variant of the Hydra flak tank, exchanging the Hydra's anti-aircraft Hydra autocannons for a pair of twin-linked storm shard mortars. While it lacks the range and raw power of the Basilisk's Earthshaker cannon, this ordnance tank was designed for claustrophobic environment of urban warfare. Its weapon system capable of raining down curtains of shrapnel upon enemy infantry without ever exposing itself to danger. The Wyvern uses a bastardized version of the Hydra's advanced auto-targeting system that constantly runs proximity sweeps of the area for concentrations of enemy infantry. The machine spirits of these vehicles are renowned for their malicious nature, as they actively seek the most tightly packed and vulnerable grouping of enemy infantry and strain the target on them, sometimes even overriding the commands of their crews. When the artillery piece does fire, its storm shard mortars emit a distinctive roar as they spew clouds of shells high into the air. The sound of these weapons firing becomes the dread of the enemy's forces. Facing batteries of Wyverns in dense urban areas is inevitably followed by the sound of these same shells descending with crackling booms as they detonate, and the harrowing scream of the maimed and dying left in their wake. In the galaxy, where many mankind's enemies leave the soldiers of the Imperial Guard with a feeling of powerlessness and inadequacy, such as the vindictive weapon is extremely popular among them. There are a few things that can restore a guardsman's faith, like watching arrogant Eldari, or terrifying demons reduced to piles of bloody, frantic madness by the shelling of a Wyvern artillery battery. The Wyvern is worth its weight in gold for its spectacle alone, not only being devastating to the enemy forces, but improving morale by reducing them to powerless, terrified mass as they die. The Wyvern is a very versatile artillery vehicle, as whole batteries of them can rain oblivion upon the foe, and they can be attached in small numbers to other formations. A single Wyvern can provide an Imperial Guard infantry platoon with close-range fire support, fending off wave after wave of enemy forces, who might otherwise overrun the guardsmen that it is supporting. When deployed with other formations, a Wyvern can keep enemy infantry from advancing upon vulnerable areas, such as flanks and the rear. Even ultra-fast moving targets such as Eldar jet bikes can find themselves cut to pieces by experienced Wyvern crews. Each successful kill elicits a growl of satisfaction from the Wyvern's malicious and bloodthirsty machine spirit, even as its sensors hunt for its next victim. The Wyvern is armed with a pair of target-mounted twin-linked storm shard mortars, specializing in close-range saturation bombing. The Wyvern fills a very different battlefield role from other Imperial artillery vehicles like the long-range Basilisk or the heavy firepower of the Bombard. Although the Wyvern lacks necessary firepower to effectively engage enemy armoured vehicles, they do excel at generating an all-consuming storm of shrapnel, for which there is no escape. A battery of these tanks can fill a street from end to end with whistling, razor-edged death, relentlessly pounding enemy infantry until nothing remains but bloody mush and drifting smoke. The shells from the storm shard mortars explode upon their targets, ensuring their victims have nowhere to hide, and their air-bursting rounds cannot reach. The shrapnel from the storm shard mortar can tear undergrowth to shreds, flak board, and barricades are completely perforated, and craters and trenches are turned into death traps. The Wyvern can strike directly, and concentrations of enemy infantry in order to clear paths for allied troops, or spread their fire out in an area denial bombardment that forces even the most tenacious defenders to abandon their posts or die. The Wyvern is also armed with a single hull-mounted heavy bolter or heavy flamer for defence. The vehicle can be outfitted with a searchlight, smoke launchers, an enclosed crew compartment, relic plating, a dozer blade, a recovery gear, extra armour plating, fire barrels, a hunter-killer missile launcher, camouflage netting, and an Agura array. The Wyvern consists of 5 crew members, number 1 being the commander, number 2 being the driver, number 3 being the gunner, number 4 being the loader, and number 5 the comms operator. Starting with the lowest insignia, it is Guardsman 2nd class, whereas the rest of the crew are that of Guardsman 3rd class. The next highest rank is that of a Lance Corporal, and the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Corporal, and again the rest of the Guardsmen within the tank are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Staff Sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Sergeant 1st class, and the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. And finally, for the Wyvern, the highest ranking insignia is that of a Master Sergeant, and the rest of its tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The Manticore. The Manticore, also known as the Manticore rocket launcher, is a self-propelled artillery rocket piece used by the Astra Militarum that is based on a variant of the Chimera Armoured Personnel Carrier chassis. A formidable weapon, the Manticore is capable of firing devastating barrages over incredible ranges. Though not as commonly seen on the battlefield as the Basilisk or the Earthshaker cannon, the Manticore's versatility gives it a distinct advantage over other artillery. Named for the ferocious creature from the ancient Terran mythology, the Manticore is armed with 4 long-range artillery rockets, capable of firing a variety of different warheads, such as high-explosive fragmentation warheads, oxy-sulfur incendiary warheads, air-gas warheads, to high-altitude and surface-to-air interceptor missiles, providing it with an anti-aircraft capability. But the most common type remains the deadly Storm Eagle rockets, the signature payload of these ancient siege vehicles. The standard pattern of the Manticore is produced on the Forge World of Siges 8, where the rare pattern of a Manticore that makes use of the primary incendiary Manticore missiles is manufactured on the Forge World of Goriah. The Manticore rocket launcher is an ancient siege engine that dates back to the earliest days of the Imperium of Man. Once, these potent self-propelled artillery pieces mounted a variety of devastating warheads. Over time, as Forge Worlds have fallen and humanity's technological lore has been lost behind the veil of mythology, the Manticore's versatility has lessened, though some variants still exist in far-flung corners of the Imperium. It is now the Diplomanto Minitorum standard for the Manticores to go into battle, bearing 4 mighty Storm Eagle rockets. These munitions are by far the most powerful remaining Manticore armament, and are more than capable of causing unsustainable levels of damage to any foe. Though its potency is undeniable, the Manticore is an ancient machine and prone to exhibiting considerable technological eccentricities. To reload a Manticore requires several solar hours of careful, uninterrupted ministration by a crew of tech priests and specialist servitors. This process absolutely cannot be undertaken in the field, rendering the vehicle's ammunition reserve finite. This is coupled with the fact that the sheer adequacy of the surviving Manticores has rendered their machine spirits truculent and temperamental. If prevailing conditions are not to the rocket launcher's liking, or its systems are treated without due delicacy, the Manticore has been known to malfunction in most unwillful manner. Storm Eagle rockets deviate widely off course, fall uselessly out of the air, or simply ignore the depression of launch routes with curmudgeonly indifference. A Manticore crew will commonly bow to their machine before and after combat, humbly entreating its permission to discharge its weapons, and then thanking it for delivering the Emperor's wrath. During battle, they maintain a near-constant mantra of prayer and obeisance, with the aim to mollifying their armoured steel. Yet operational difficulties are still commonplace. Compared to the Earthshaker cannon, a Manticore is a highly sophisticated piece of equipment, utilizing auto-modulated radio control systems, gyrographic roll stabilization, and radar tracking. The Manticore can be used to fill a number of roles and make up the storages in the existing order of battle of the Astra Militarum. When armed with the anti-aircraft missiles, it can stand in for the Hydra, and when armed with the oxysulfur incendiary warheads, it becomes a devastating anti-infantry weapon, and when armed with the high explosive warheads, it can even be used to attack enemy tank formations. Each Manticore missile is divided into 5 components: the fuse control and guidance equipment, an electrical unit, an explosive warhead, and the missile's propellant tank. Each missile is powered by its 2-part solid fuel rocket that generates speeds of up to 300 meters per second once airborne. Due to the restrictions of the number of missiles available, Manticores are not as commonly seen on the battlefield as basilisks. This means artillery barrages are still fired by breech-loading artillery, though Imperial Guard commanders find the Manticore's tactical flexibility very useful. Each Storm Eagle's rocket, the most common munition now used by the Manticore, is the self-continued arsenal. Mounted upon a single-stage booster and fitted with guidance and detonation anguras, these munitions are capable of extreme range bombardment, and the Storm Eagle warhead contains concentric racks of high-explosive bomblets, each soaked in sacred unguents of the Adeptus Mechanicus and hand-scribed with 100 canticles of wrath. Soaring across the battlefield upon a cocktail of flame, the Storm Eagle descends upon its targets like an avenging angel. The deafening roar of the rocket's approach causes foes to abase themselves in terror, or flee screaming in a hopeless attempt of self-preservation. Directly above the target zone, the blessed warhead breaks up, unleashing its payload of bomblets across a wide area. Tanks are sent cartwheeling by concussive blasts, or are completely pulverized by the force of multiple detonations. Infantry are atomized or hurled into the air, blackened bodies tumbling down around the impact zone like ash from a hellish conflagration. Each warhead spawns a thunderous carpet of explosions that leave naught but wrath-strewn debris in their wake. Whilst extremely powerful, the Manticore is notoriously unpredictable. The temperamental machine spirit of this artillery vehicle must be continuously tended to by a group of artillery batteries attendant tech priests. Otherwise, without the appropriate blessings, the machine spirit may be offended, resulting in the rockets veering off target, or even failing to detonate. Unfortunately, it is more common for the Manticore's weapon system to simply jam, and for its rockets to unable to launch. It's very rare circumstances has been recorded that the Manticores have unintentionally fired their entire payload at once, resulting in a catastrophic destruction of an entire Imperial units. Despite the Manticore's unpredictable streak, many commanders consider the rewards of their successful employment more than the worth of the gamble. A single Manticore is adjudged by the Diplomato Militarum to be equal in material value to an entire battery or less of ordnance, and with one good reason. When the rocket launchers are attached to the Imperial Guard regiments for support, most officers employ them as terror weapons at a pivotal moment, using the might of the Manticore to deliver the decisive killing blow. The Manticore can be equipped with several different types of missiles, including the Manticore missiles, the anti-air Sky Eagle rockets, and now the standard Storm Eagle rockets. The vehicle is normally equipped with a hull-mounted heavy bolter. It can be also outfitted with a heavy flamer if needed. The Manticore can also be equipped with the following enhancements: camouflage netting, extra armor plating, a hunter-killer missile launcher, a minesweeper, improved communications equipment, a pintle-mounted heavy stubber or storm bolter, a dozer blade, rough terrain modifications, a searchlight, track guards, and smoke launchers. The Manticore consists of a crew of 4 members, number 1 being the commander, number 2 being the driver, number 3 being the loader, and number 4 being the gunner. Starting with the lowest insignia, the commander is of the rank of Guardsman 2nd class, whereas the rest of the crew are that of Guardsman 3rd class. The next insignia is that of a Lance Corporal, who is the tank commander, and the rest of the crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Corporal, and again the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Sergeant, and again the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of a Staff Sergeant, and the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The next highest rank is that of Sergeant 1st class, and the rest of the tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. And finally, the highest rank obtainable for the Manticore vehicle is that of a Master Sergeant, and the rest of his tank crew are that of Guardsman 2nd class. The Deathstrike Missile Launcher. The Deathstrike Missile Launcher is an Imperial Guard artillery vehicle based on the Chimera chassis. Its ability to fire a massive payload over extreme ranges is the Deathstrike's main advantage over other artillery systems. Only ever seeing deployment during the most vigorous of battles, each Deathstrike missile launcher is a force multiplier whose payload causes fear in even the most experienced enemies of the Imperium. The Deathstrike is designated as an Ordnance Extremis by the Diplomato Militarum and requires special authorization to deploy. The Deathstrike launcher represents the largest threat offered by any mobile Imperial Guard missile system. Mounted on the Chimera chassis is a single Deathstrike missile, an intercontinental solid-fuel rocket with a range measured thousands of kilometers. This missile can carry a variety of payloads, though by far the most common is the plasma warhead. Upon detonation, these missiles can annihilate entire armies in a raging fireball that vaporizes flesh in an instant. Others can carry deadly biological pathogens or specialized Titan killer warheads, while the rarest of all are the deadly vortex missiles. These doomsday weapons of apocalyptic capability use Dark Age technology, knowledge of their tear holes within the fabric of reality upon their explosion, creating a warp rift which destroys everything it touches. Most of the missiles carried by Titans can be modified to be fired on the Deathstrike launcher as well. The deployment of a single Deathstrike missile launcher is a complicated procedure that requires a huge investment of resources and many religious and administrative rituals by the Adeptus Mechanicus and Administratum, respectively. As such, the deployment can take months to complete. Moreover, the large lumbering launch vehicles often require their own dedicated escort, and presents foes with a vulnerable and soft target. For the Diplomato Militarum, simple logistics has precluded its deployment in all but the most extreme circumstances. Use of these weapons is strictly controlled, with the sanction of their use controlled by the Segmentum Command, and launch codes held by the loyal and iron-willed Lord Commissars. Tactical Deathstrike missiles are equipped with complex robotic guidance systems, allowing them to choose and pursue their own targets. When fired, the missile climbs high into the air, up to where its cameras can survey the whole battlefield. The onboard computer then selects an objective and dives back to the surface. Re-entry is very inaccurate, and if the missile fails to hit the target directly, in its fall, it will remain 10 to 20 meters above the ground, dodging terrain and incoming fire in order to reach its goal in a slow nap of the Earth flight. As a result, the missile never misses, except when running out of fuel. The Deathstrike missile launcher finds itself in an uncommon sight on the modern battlefield, as over the years the Imperium has slowly moved on to more mobile forms of artillery that are more smaller and require less logistical support. Due to their size and damage potential, Deathstrike batteries are mostly used for the total obliteration of key targets of those beyond the range of conventional artillery. Variants of the Deathstrike missiles. The Barrage Missile. The Barrage Missile contains multiple plasma warheads to vaporize a vast area of land or dilapidate a Titan's void shields. The Harpoon Missile. The Harpoon Missile is designed to penetrate a Titan's armor plating and short-circuit its systems. The onboard computer brain can even control the impacted target to the same extent. Smaller targets are outright destroyed by the powerful electromagnetic pulse. The Warp Missile. The Warp Missile is equipped with a miniature warp drive that rematerializes directly inside the target before exploding, bypassing the shields and armor. The Vortex Missile. These weapons are as rare as they are powerful, tearing apart the very fabric of reality to create a gaping hole that sucks everything it touches into the warp. Vortex missiles are constructed by using psychers to channel the raw energy of the warp into an intercontinental ballistic missile. Vortex missiles mounted on a Deathstrike platforms are so valuable that they are guarded by a minimum of an entire infantry platoon, charged with concealing the weapon from enemy saboteurs and kill teams. Normally, only a stratagem command can sanction their use, and the launch codes are entrusted solely by the Lord Commissar in charge of the missile, as only these individuals combine loyalty to the Imperium with the resolution to fire this doomsday weapon at any cost. The Deathstrike missile launcher, besides its main payload, is armed with a hull-mounted weapon, either a heavy bolter or heavy flamer, and includes a searchlight and smoke launchers. It may also be upgraded with camo netting, dozer blades, extra armor, and hunter-killer missile, and a pintle-mounted storm bolter or heavy stubber. There are no technical specifications for this vehicle, as it hasn't been released by the Adeptus Mechanicus. However, we do know what the Insignia is. A single Deathstrike is commanded by a first sergeant. If there is a squadron of these vehicles, the first to lead the squadron would be a first sergeant, then the second Deathstrike would be led by a master sergeant, and then the third Deathstrike within the squadron would be that of sergeant first class. Here is a quick overview of all the insignia that is mentioned in this particular video. Guardsman 3rd class, then Guardsman 2nd class, Lance Corporal, Corporal, Sergeant, Staff Sergeant, Sergeant 1st class, Master Sergeant, First Sergeant, and the Lord Commissar. Thank you for watching this episode. In the next episode, we'll be looking at other combat vehicles of the 18th Cadian Army Group. Variants and patterns of the Hellhound, including the Devil Dog, the Bane Wolf, the Salamander Command Tank, the Salamander Scout Tank, Tank Destroyers, and of course, the Thunderer Siege Tank. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more future content. And if you want to support my work further, do consider heading over to my Patreon page. Those who are currently supporting me will be featured in the end credits of this video, and I'd like to thank all of those people for supporting my work. You can be featured in our battle reports, unlock exclusive images, and work in progress, you can create your very own formations for me to showcase on YouTube. Gain battle honours, medals, and glory for the Imperium and for the Emperor. And a special thank you to Games Workshop themselves. Their narrative is absolutely fantastic, and it really does dig in deeper as to how the Imperial Guard and the Astra Militarum are organised. Even if it takes hundreds, if not thousands of hours of research, it is still a pleasure to show you these videos. Again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy wargaming. For honour, and for glory, and for Cadia, Cadia will stand. Thank you.